A roamer over this whole world over.
From the therapist, we have mentioned several times, and we'll be mentioning over and over again, those four words. What upholds your existence?
As happy as me, you'll never see. Represent for the peeps. Represent for the streets.
Of all the classes I teach, this is my favorite, and I also consider it the most important one, which might come as a surprise to people. Why is it the most important, and why do I like it so much? There are thousands of reasons, and I've said this before to you. Of the elements in my life presently that are wonderful, and there are many of them, I'm at a point in a space in life that it's hard for me even to believe that it could be so good, that living could be so good. I have no major problems in the world, none. I am extremely happy, a wonderful marriage, wonderful children, wonderful friends. I'm as healthy as anyone can be in my age group. Certainly I'm in the top 1 percentile easily. I never get sick. I haven't had a headache in 53 years, a stomach ache in 35 years, or a cold, much less the flu, in 25 years. And I'm sailing through life, having a wonderful time. And of all the things in life that are really part and parcel of all the good things I'm experiencing, the very biggest one, the top one, ahead of everything, is stretching. If there's any one reason why I am experiencing what I'm experiencing now at the age of 76, feeling like I'm 25, it is because of stretching. And I'm hoping to somehow impress that upon each of you. If there's one thing that could change your life, and I'm talking about your entire life, longevity, quality longevity, it is stretching. And I want to explain that to you, because most people not only just take it for granted, although they don't have anything against stretching, it doesn't seem to be too vital a thing in life, especially when you're young. You don't really have the need for it. It doesn't strike you as something that's a high priority or could have a real lasting effect on your life. But that's where you're wrong. That's where everyone is wrong, including people who are great believers in stretching, because they do not know the theme. They know stretches. In fact, you can go on YouTube and find dozens, if not hundreds, of stretching routines. And they're all fine in terms of stretches. But they don't teach you why you're stretching. You don't know what the theme is. It's comparable to an actor getting a part in a play and then begins rehearsing the play with other actors, and they go along rehearsing, moving ahead toward opening the play in front of an audience without knowing what the theme is. Without knowing what the theme is, what are they supposed to do with the play, with the part? They're going to stumble along. Why did the author write this? What's the meaning? What's the central idea that's going to create the sense of identity and motivation they need in order to do it in front of an audience? So, although we stretch, we don't have a theme. We don't know why it is so fundamentally important, why I am sitting here telling you that it's the most important thing in my life. So that's the first thing that I want you to discover, the why behind it, so that you can elevate it to its proper place in your life. How many people here have either had children or know of people who have children. Everybody?
It's pretty universal.
Yeah.
Now, whenever, and I and my wife have 4 children, and I remember those moments each time when Nan said she could feel the baby. Now, what do we say? Universally, what do people say when they first feel the baby?
It's kicking.
It's kicking, right? Think for a moment. Is the baby kicking?
Stretching.
It's stretching. The baby is stretching. The womb has some elasticity, but basically it's not going to just grow and grow and grow. But the baby is growing. And the first natural instinct of any creature is to stretch. The very first natural instinct of any living creature is to stretch. Why? It must. It's part of the human design. It's part of creature's design. We must stretch. If a baby in the womb does not stretch, or does not stretch enough, chances are, and I'm sure Barb and other people here who know this, would be born deformed or stillborn, right?
Mm-hmm. They have an exercise regime that they do when they're this big.
Exactly. Again, I want you to stop and think about the human design. We're designed in a particular way, going back to the first class about human emotions. We're designed with a body, anatomy, a brain, which we don't use all too well, an immune system that protects us from pathogens, emotions. We're designed that way, whether we like it or not. Whoever designed us, whatever designed us, whether it's a God or some universal power or force, whatever it is, we're designed in a particular way. And part of that design is to stretch. From the time we are created, we begin to stretch. Now we can attach many different elements. We do it to lubricate ourselves. We do it to get the limbs in motion, to get our body, yeah. We're born that way. We're designed that way. And then things begin to tamper with that ability to stretch in a natural way. In fact, it starts very often in the maternity ward itself. At the moment the baby is born, lights on the baby, people thrashing around, getting ready to do this, that, and the other thing with the baby. Baby is held up, terrified by all of this. People putting tubes in the nose, suctioning off mucus, tagging the baby. The baby's been in a womb. It's been quiet, relaxed, swimming around. Suddenly terrorized. At that moment, we begin life's long process of moving inward, tightening up. That's where the stress and the tension begins, at that first moment of birth with violence. And it continues as we begin to grow. People go, shh, be quiet. Don't be angry, don't cry, don't be afraid, don't. We begin to tighten up. That doesn't mean we lose all of our flexibility, no. But the process of that whole reality has begun and continues. Now we get into our teens and our 20s, and if we're wise enough to exercise, we are told things about warming up and stretching, or we see people doing it. So we copy a few things that people do without really knowing it's so important? Because it doesn't seem to be that important. We go along into our 20s and 30s and 40s, and what flexibility we did have now begins to diminish because we become more sedentary, especially in this day and age. We're on the computer so often. We don't play sports as we get older, by and large. Our strength begins to wane, and as we get into our 40s and 50s, what flexibility we have begins to really decline, which is why you see people in the 50s and 60s walking around, you know, looking fragile. They're becoming very fragile. And what happens then is we figure age is responsible. We're told, well, you're not a spring chicken anymore. You know, what do you expect? And we buy into it. Okay. And we stay on this road. And we cannot prevent age-related disease that way. That's why we come down with arthritis and osteoporosis and other physical conditions. Our body is not limber, our body is not loose, we don't have the proper levels of flexibility, endurance, and strength. So as the age progresses, the natural elements begin to kick in. We get sicker more often, and we run to the doctor more often, and we get more medications more often, and more medical procedures, and we go on that way. And I can look everybody in the eye and tell you that that's not the way to go. There is nothing in the world like health. It's so wonderful, as I say, to be grooving in your 70s. And you can do that. But you have to recognize the importance of stretching and breathing and exercise in your life. We have spoken a number of times about that human condition made of three things, a triangle. One end, emotional overload. We are constantly accumulating emotional overload, both externally and internally. And without the understanding of how to release these emotions, how to process them in a normal, healthy way, they grow, and after a while we feel overwhelmed by them. And that's when we run to the doctor to be diagnosed as depressed, and you get the antidepressants. Emotional overload. Second part of the triangle, mental debris. We dramatize all of our situations. We take our problems and we build mountains out of molehills. We dramatize them, and then we ruminate about them. We go over them over and over and over again in our mind like a spinning record. And then we indulge with, oh my gods, and I'm overwhelmed, and I don't know what to do. Mental debris. And the third part of the triangle, physical disability, which would naturally accompany these other two things because you don't feel like doing things you normally might want to do. You don't feel like exercising. In fact, some people don't feel like doing anything. That's the human condition. Of these three elements, the easiest to work with is the physical. The easiest. The emotional is going to take a lot of hard work in terms of first relearning what it is to relate to that part of our human design emotionally. The mental part is going to take a lot of work also, dealing with our language, dealing with our conflicts, problems, and issues. The third part can kick in instantaneously. The minute you start doing exercise, to use that hard word, the minute you commit yourself to doing it as a lifestyle, not as this thing, the body begins to respond. That's part of the human design. You pick up something, muscles are working. Something is happening. It's the easiest way to begin changing your life. It will work and can't possibly fail. We're designed for it to work, but you have to do it and do it consistently. Just on that note, any questions about stretching, what we're talking about, why it's so important? Do you have a better idea now, clearer
Can we talk
picture?
about the release of toxins?
Oh,
Or that kind of
we'll
thing?
get to all of that, yeah. But I want just that fundamental understanding in each person's mind that we're not talking about this thing called stretching as just something you do. We're designed to do it, and if we don't do it, we suffer all the consequences. If we do it consistently as a lifestyle, it changes our life. And you can prevent conditions from happening. You can recover from conditions that exist. You don't have to age poorly. You don't have to get old and decline rapidly. You don't have to have all these conditions and illnesses and diseases and become fragile and end up in a nursing home. I've told you that so many times. I work in these places, and every time I leave, I go to my car and I sit in there and I cry, because I know none of those people are going to walk out of that place again, because they did not prevent what could have been prevented. And you know what? Most of them are pretty damn angry because of it. Usually after about 4 or 5 sessions with me, working them out, stretching them, in their own way, they will say to me, I feel so disgusted and angry and hostile because I didn't do this when I should have. And they know it's pretty much too late now. We're talking about life and death here, the difference. And we're talking about quality life as opposed to just years of longevity. I'm 76 now. My quality of life is wonderful. I sail down the street, I dance, I box. I want to keep doing that into my 80s and 90s and on, and people can do that and do it in other parts of the world. We're talking about quality existence, not just living to a particular age. Not the same thing. It dumbfounds me that people are willing to go along that path knowing without a doubt that they're going to end up living a life that is degrading to them, debilitating, where you suffer. Why go in that direction when you can change it? But you have to do things. You can't just talk about it. You can't intellectualize about it or philosophize about it. You've got to do. And the doing has nothing to do with what you feel. As I've said repeatedly to people in terms of emotions, motivation, inspiration, confidence are not emotions. They are not emotions. They're states of mind that come to be as a result of practice, consistency, experience. It's like the actor who plays a part. And I mentioned Yul Brynner in The King and I as a perfect example. He played that part 3,100 odd times. And when he was interviewed by Johnny Carson toward the end of his career, Carson quipped lightly, "You must be pretty comfortable in this role now and be pretty relaxed, aren't you? You've been doing it for so many years." And Brynner looked at him and said, "No." In fact, Brynner told the audience, 20 minutes before every one of those 3,100 performances, he went to the bathroom to vomit. Did he feel like going on stage? Did he feel relaxed and confident? No, there's no such feeling. That's why people have stage fright. But because they have been doing it repeatedly over a period of time, their mind knows it, and that's where the confidence lies. I know I'm going to do this. I know I'm going to go before that audience, and I'm going to go over the top. I'm going to be great. No matter how I feel, my mouth can be dry, my knees shaking, my stomach tight. That's what confidence and inspiration are about. Not you feel like doing it. I box on Tuesday evenings. I don't feel like going there. I swear to God, I don't feel like going there. I work hard all day. I'd like to go home and pour a glass of bubbly and sit with Nan and hold her and listen to music and relax. Instead, I'm going to boot camp at 76 years of age.
But look at your arms.
Yes.
They're amazing.
Yes. That's why I do it. I love the results. So forget the idea of you need to feel like exercising. Forget that. Throw that away. You may never feel like doing it, but you can commit to making it part of your life, making it part of your lifestyle. It's not an emotion. Remember, you have to separate emotions from thoughts and which one to use at a given time. When it comes to such things as exercise, go up here, not to what you're feeling. Don't tell yourself, I don't feel like doing it. It's like telling yourself you don't feel like living and loving and creating, which is what life is about. You must do it because it upholds your existence. It's as basic as that. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And by the way, we're going to go through this theory part of it, theme part of it, and then of course we're going to do some stretching. I promise you that, okay? So if you're thinking that we're just going to be talking, no, we're going to be stretching, I promise you, okay? Any question?
I just have to say something because when I see you and like your arms and everything, you're busting the mold for me on what it is to age. I've been freaking out about getting older just because society is so, you know, not there with it. But I see you and I just see like it can be different.
It is different for many people. I mentioned going to Havana, Cuba, and walking through old Havana for about 4 or 5 hours one afternoon. And in that time, I must have crossed paths with about 250,000 people, because the Cubans are out and partying and having fun all day long, and exercising, playing ball, dancing, music everywhere. All of them look great. Great condition, all of them. People 80s, 90s, even smoking foot-long stogies, are well-toned and active and dancing. And get up and you dance with them, they're moving all over the place. It's a cultural thing in many respects. America is so backward when it comes to this, it's beyond imagination. 80% of the population does not exercise. And above the age of 45, that rises to about 92 to 94% of the population does not exercise. And of the percentage that do exercise, 98 to 99% don't know what they're doing. They simply don't know. They haven't been trained. When I first joined a health club, Mid-City Health Club in New York City, way back in the 50s, when you joined and you went out on the floor, there was always 1 or 2 trainers there. You didn't have to have a personal trainer. In fact, very few people had personal trainers back then. Some of the professional bodybuilders and weightlifters, of course, would have them. But people didn't have personal trainers then. But there were always trainers on the floor who would automatically go over to you and start training you, teaching you form, teaching you style, teaching you what you needed to do and how to do it. Today that doesn't exist. And the truth is most of the trainers are very poor, unskilled. To become an accredited trainer today takes anywhere from 6 to 9 months, and you can do most of it online. As a result of that, they're not equipped to really train people properly. And as I've told the class before, of the 8 or 9 agencies in America that accredit physical fitness trainers, not one of them has a comprehensive stretching program. They have a few pages on stretching, and that's all. 2 of these organizations came to me 3 or 4 years ago and asked me to create a curriculum, and I actually agreed to do it for one of the organizations. Unfortunately, my brother passed away about 1.5 years ago, and that interrupted my work on that. But none of these agencies have stretching programs. In fact, on a national level, we know practically nothing about stretching. There are no models out there. We don't do it. You would assume that professional baseball teams, football teams would have trainers that really knew it. No, absolutely not. That's why a baseball player swings the bat and runs 20 feet and suddenly pulls up with a hamstring problem. He's not stretched. Only one player in baseball knows how to stretch. And you know his name?
No, I don't know his name, but recently there was a story on NPR that pre-stretching is bad.
Oh, sure, I'll get to that. I'm glad you brought that up. I'm glad you did, and I'll explain that in a moment. The only one who knows how to stretch in professional baseball is a man named Ichiro, former Seattle Mariner. Where did he learn it? In Japan, of course. The Japanese, after the Second World War, were faced with a massive recovery program, just as the Germans were. And one of the unique things that the Japanese did was, with every company and agency and organization and industry, 2 or 3 times a day, sirens would go off, and everybody, workers, management, and owners, had to go out and exercise. That's one of the ways they recovered so quickly, way ahead of the Germans. That's where the Japanese were building those cars so quickly, and, you know, as if the Second World War never happened. So they know how to do it. We don't. Beside Ichiro, the only other person in America who really understands it is a wonderful woman athlete named Dara Torres, who at the 2008 Olympics in Beijing came within a hairbreadth of winning a gold medal. She won a silver and 2 more medals. And her trainers, Steve Sierra and Ann Jeffries, who were with her in Beijing, they worked with her in Florida, and I contacted them, and make a long story short, which I've told you, I trained with them in Arizona and then here in Seattle and incorporated it into my program because they had boosted up all this knowledge quite a bit from the time I learned it 50 years ago. So it's not taught, it's not known. And the basic concept theory that I introduced to you, it's part of our human design, nobody knows it. They just refer to stretching as stretching, warming up, and nothing more. Bad reports on stretching. To go along with what you just asked, about 7 years ago, right before the publication of one of my books, Monument to Failure, which is the most comprehensive study the American healthcare system ever made, 30-year study, my editor came to me one day, and she had a worried look on her face. And I said, "What's the matter, Mia?" And she said, "I want you to read these 2 reports that have been released by the Center for Disease Control." The Center for Disease Control, along with the FDA, are the 2 primary regulatory health agencies in America. I read the reports. They were both about stretching. And both reports stated that stretching is not important, that stretching does not help people prevent injuries, and stretching does not help people recover from injuries, etc., and so on. CDC sent these 2 reports out. Mia, I'm sorry?
They are so backwards.
Okay,
Why
but
don't you
let's
take all the stuff?
right, but
So it's a
let's
nightmare.
explain why. Mia me to read these 2, and she said, and Mia, my editor, was very, very thorough when it comes to documentation. She did not want anything in my book that was not well documented. She said, "What are we going to do with these?" I said, "We're going to use them." And she said, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "The reports are correct." And she was stunned. "What? Nickolas, you're the stretch master. How can you say they're..." And I said, "The reports as written are correct, because what they're basically saying is, this is what Americans do to stretch. They go like this for about 8 seconds. They go like this for about 8 seconds. They do this, and now they're ready to stretch. And of course that's useless, that's worthless." So the reports were accurate in terms of what we do for stretching, as opposed to what we should do, what Dara Torres does, what Ichiro does, and what I do. So that's why we have a few bad reps against stretching. Let's get to exercising, some basic ideas, fundamental things you've got to know. There are 4 forms of exercise that you must do. Needless to say, if you only do 3, you're going to be better. If you only do 2, you're going to be a little better, 1. But you're not putting the whole package together. It's like not having the complete protein. To make a complete protein, you need certain things. To make complete exercise, you need 4 elements. 1, cardio. And by the way, as you know, I keep everything simple. I don't believe in rocket science to explain something that is easier to understand with a straight line. How do we know if we are okay in terms of cardio. We should be able to run at a comfortable pace, not a speed pace, but a comfortable pace, 100 yards. Say you had to catch a bus. You should be able to run that distance, and when you get there, you should be going, not. I watch people down in Queen Anne where there's a bus stop. One bus pulls up and a bus pulls up behind it, and there are people that are on the second bus that want to catch the first bus, so the bus will honk the first, and the people will run out the door, and they'll run 30 or 40 feet, and I see young people, they're running 30, 40 feet, and they go. My own boxing club, when we do speed drills, the average age of people there are 25 to 30. I'm running around, and these people, and I am often asked, how come I never pant? Because I'm in good shape cardio-wise. I know what to do. We should be able to do that. If we can't do that, then we're not in good shape in terms of cardio. Does that make sense? Now, what are the best ways of doing it? Bursts. Rope skipping, jumping jacks, or running. Bursts. I like to do it with jumping jacks because I'm in here most of the time. I don't have the chance to go on a track. So you do jumping jacks. You want to build up to a plateau of about 1 minute of jumping jacks. You don't have to start that way. You start even 10 seconds, 12, 15, but you want to build up to about 1 minute as a plateau, and you don't have to keep going. You don't have to go to 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes. And then you stop, let your heart rate come down to almost normal. You don't need a heart rate gadget. You really don't. You'll know when your heart rate is almost back to normal. Then you do another set of jumping jacks. Now, when you're starting out, if your first one is maybe 30 seconds and you do the second, you might get 20 seconds, 25. That's okay. You build up. Your objective is to build up to 8 bursts of 60 seconds. When you're at that level, you don't have to go beyond it. That's a great plateau to be at. And it might take you months to get up to there. That's okay. You could do the same thing with sprinting or with rope skipping or a combination of those things for cardio. Better than running for 3 or 4 miles or getting on the treadmill alone. Not that there's anything wrong with doing that. But all the studies have proven that bursts are the finest way of building up cardio and being able to really move along in life that way.
From God's on board, each day I dine. From the Bering Straits to Palestine, this spring, this brook will ring the bell. No need of wealth, you're in God's hotel. Rover, rover, this whole world over, happy as me, you'll never see. Represent for the world. Rover, rover, this whole world over, happy as me, you'll never see. One should know though was Christ's motto, so do the same. Let heaven flow. No pills, no bills.